All right. Do you want to start by doing the disclosure?
Okay. Securities offered through Osaic Wealth Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth.
That was perfect. You could be a voiceover.
I was practicing that this morning. I was like, and it took me a little while, but that's good.
Yeah, you could totally be a voiceover. All right, good morning. This is Glitch Mob Podcast. I'm Monica Vanderpool. I'm going to be your host. And I am here today with Mike Dracoulis. He is a wealth planner with Dracoulis Financial Group. And we are going to talk about keeping your financial independence is what we're going to focus on today. So Mike, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Monica. Appreciate it.
I'm very excited about this conversation because it's something that I'm very passionate about. And part of my story is that the past 13 years being in a relationship, I slowly started losing my financial independence. And it was something that I didn't notice at first, but now that I'm getting out of the relationship, things that I did in the past, I kind of regretted. And I became financially dependent on my spouse at the time. So I think it's something that, that we need to talk about and that I want to get out there
Definitely.
just to keep your financial independence.
No, those are great subjects, and it's something that everybody goes through, definitely.
Yeah. So let's start off by talking about, how do you maintain financial independence in a marriage?
Well, one of the biggest keys that I found personally and with this career is communication. I mean, just making sure that both sides, are understanding what's coming in, what's coming out. And it's very hard. I see it all the time where you start talking to one spouse and they want to know more about finances or get to invest and do different things like that. And the other spouse is very hesitant. And so that sometimes is hard to work with people that don't communicate with each other. But I think, once people start understanding where everything is, it creates independence for each one of them. And so it doesn't pigeonhole them to just stay in the dark and, not know anything, just rely on. Typically, it's the spouse that's the breadwinner is doing a lot of the financial advising or like paying bills and doing all that kind of stuff. But just understanding from both sides, I think, is very important, and just communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, nothing, a lot of spouses, they're scared also to talk to people because that's another big thing they don't want to financially undress in front of somebody else. And
Right. Oh,
that's
I
a
love that.
Yeah, that's a big
Financially
problem.
undress.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you ask a lot of times, and, typically women are better at coming out and talking about those types of things. But sometimes men are scared because they're scared that they didn't do the right things or they didn't do enough, and so it creates a kind of a clash to talk about. I mean, we probably both grew up in the houses where you don't talk politics, religion, money at the dinner table, those types of things. And now it's kind of changed to see where everything's at. We're talking to our kids about money and those different things. And I think having those conversations is important to having a successful financial plan.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. When my growing up, we didn't talk about money.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about money at all. Not that my parents should have talked to me about their money, but that drilled in my head that I don't know, you kind of kept that to yourself, and then you get into the situations where, and I'm sure you've experienced this with some of your clients, is that either a spouse passes away and the surviving spouse, they don't know passwords, they don't know where money is, they don't, there wasn't a will in place, or my case 4 years ago was my dad passed away. And it was, we knew it was coming because he was sick, but when it happened all of a sudden. And there were things that we weren't prepared for.
Yeah.
that we had to kind of figure out after the fact.
It's tough. I mean, especially in that situation where everybody's mourning and sad and everything like that. That's the last thing you want to do is try to be the detective and see where all the accounts were and how they were set up and if they
Right.
were set up properly. So one of the big things is having an advisor is important to make sure that they're kind of like the quarterback of the family, team, and making sure that they understand. So they could they could mourn and they could go through those periods, but understanding that somebody's taking care of all that other stuff for them and
Right.
understanding it. So
Right. So can I ask you what's your feeling on prenups?
prenups, it is a case by case basis that just depending on the situation of the family setup and if there are previous marriages involved, those types of things. But even if somebody's getting married for the first time, and let's just say that it's later on in life, they've created some wealth, they've done some things on their own before the marriage and they get married, it's probably a smart thing to do. And it's still probably a smart thing to do to have sometimes a postnup, so you could do things after you get married. Now there's going to be different things. Now I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not giving legal advice or anything like that, but having those conversations also with your estate planning attorney is very important because that could not only help the spouses individually if something did happen, but if there's a disability, a death, a bankruptcy that happens, all that stuff, you want to protect each other and protect your family, going forward from that. And that's what that does.
And I think society has kind of put this a bad rap on prenups that, if you want a prenup, then that means you're going into a relationship with the expectation of leaving the relationship, and which I think is just bullshit.
It is. I
To be
mean,
honest.
that's not always the case why you need that.
Yeah, it's just, you just got to protect yourself. If you have any type of assets, or any type of equity, you need to go into a relationship or a marriage with that communication and those clear lines of, what's that going to look like if we part ways.
Yeah.
I think
We
it's smart.
always joke about, sometimes getting prenups or postnups on families that if the wife dies, I don't want my husband to go off and marry a NFL cheerleader and then she
Yeah,
takes all of my kids' money that we've built together.
right.
So there's different stipulations that you could do that. And it's not just about divorce, like I said, it's just, it other things could happen to make sure that your family gets past the way that you want it to get past your money and stuff. So
Right, exactly. So, all right, speaking of assets, what are your thoughts on things being titled in your name versus your spouse's name, both of your names? What's your thoughts on that?
So there's nothing wrong with having individual accounts and having joint accounts. I mean, the one thing that a lot of people should look at is making sure if you do have individual accounts, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the other person on as a joint, type of account holder so they could make transactions and do things.
So you're talking about bank accounts, savings account, bank accounts.
Brokerage accounts, typically when you have IRAs and stuff like that, they're going to have a beneficiary tied to it. And a lot of times what I show people, tell people if they have an individual account, put a TOD on it, transfer on death title. And that just gets it to where it makes it easier to pass on because it creates a beneficiary. And that it's going to go to the right beneficiary if something did happen to you. But you still have total control while you're live. You have access to it and you're able to do whatever you want in those types of accounts. So it's not just bank accounts, but our brokerage accounts like with securities, stock bonds, mutual funds, whatever you have in there. You might have gotten that from a old aunt that she lent you or left you some money, but you still want that. You don't want to put it in a joint account or you don't want to, really share that or that's your account. So, but you still want to make sure that it goes to the right people if something did happen to you.
Can you touch on that transfer of death? Kind of explain what that is to the listeners?
It's a way that an individual account is able to have a beneficiary on it. Because if you, by law, you don't have to have a beneficiary, it could just go to your state. If something happened and you don't have that TOD account on there, it's gonna if you don't have wills and trusts and you know your state planning set up and you pass away, it's going to go through probate and it's going to go to your state. So it's going to be a lot harder to transfer that to somebody who may need that money when you pass away, and it's just a lot more steps. So what happens is if you have that TOD, you pass away, the beneficiary is automatically going to get that money, and there's no. So, but that's also another thing that you need to constantly check, just like your IRA beneficiary forms, you know, all the accounts that you have that have beneficiaries, you want to make sure they're up to date, because sometimes, yeah, you do get divorced. And I've seen it several times where the ex-wife or the ex-husband is still on the beneficiary. They pass away and the new husband or wife is not getting the money that they thought they were getting. And it's going to the, and you can't do anything about that. It's hard. So.
I completely agree with that. And that's another thing that we went through with my dad was that, and they were residents of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Okay.
And now they had a will and all that stuff, but there were a few things where it's kind of unclear. My mom would have to travel down there and go through probate.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to get all of that stuff released.
Definitely. Yeah. And so that's where, you know, your will's last testament, you know, having your power attorneys, medical directives all need to, everybody should be doing that just as a baseline type of estate planning tool, just so you have the control of dictating from the grave, because you're not allowed to tell people where you want the money to go. But that's what that does, is telling everybody what your last will and testament was and where you want your money to be passed to.
Right. All right. So what about, can we talk about like a strategy to get started?
Okay. So it depends. I mean, there's all different types of people that want to get started in saving, investing, you know, just planning for their future and having that nest egg. A lot of times it's, you know, it's a misconception that people have to have a lot of money, you know, or, you know, have a bunch of different things already set up before they talk to somebody like myself. You will have some advisors out there that have minimums and things like that. But, you know, for the most part, whenever I'm dealing with clients that have a son or a daughter that want to get started investing, I'll help them out, because I think that it's important, imperative for them to get started correctly and doing the right steps to be able to build their wealth and, you
Right.
know, to help them out. But, you know, most part is usually people don't charge, you know, to sit down and just have a conversation. And that's the biggest thing, is just have a conversation of where everything's coming in, what's coming out. Sometimes people, I can't help, you know, but I could point them in the right directions to get them to that place. And eventually they'll come back and say, I'm now at that place where you told me where I should, you know, really start doing this and that. And then I could help them out a little bit more with things. So it's just having a conversation with somebody, you know, to be able to build the right savings, the growth strategies, the, you know, retirement strategies, making sure that everything's protected. So if something bad does happen, it's not just all going away, you know, one fell swoop. So you got to make sure that you have a plan going.
Right.
So yeah, I always talk to.
I like that you brought up that point that there's some places that won't, if you want to get started and just have that conversation, that there's no charge for that.
Yeah, and there's different types of advisors out there that they'll charge fees for financial planning. They'll include it with different strategies that they're doing, investing your money. So you just got to ask the questions of what you feel comfortable, what you could afford, those types of things. And so with my process, I always just tell them how I work and what I do, and then, you know, it gets them to be able to decide if they want to work with me, or if I'm a good fit, or if they're a good fit with me. So
So
sometimes.
your initial consultation is no charge.
Correct. Yeah. I
Okay.
don't.
And what does somebody bring to that conversation?
just I always I don't like to get like statements before like information a lot. I want to see what their goals, what their thoughts are on money, if we did work together 6 months from now, what would they expect me to do 6 months from now from that point? So I could get a better understanding where they are and what they want to do.
Okay. So then with your clients, do you touch base with them every, I don't know, once a month, once a quarter? How does that work?
So I have different types of clients. Some, typically I'll do a quarterly review or like, correspondence with them, and just making sure that I'm staying in communication with them with the types of investments they have or the accounts that they have that I keep in touch with. But there's some people that, they call me up and they want to just buy life insurance for me, and I won't talk to them but once a year, and just to make sure everything's updated and stuff like that, or if things changed. So it ranges between once a quarter to once a year that I'll talk to my clients.
Okay.
So yeah.
So somebody who wants to start investing, what are your thoughts on the process to start investing?
So asking questions again, getting to know what's coming in, what's coming out. You don't want to have somebody investing in something where it gets tied up and they can't get to it in an emergency or in an opportunity. So there's different steps of making sure that they're doing the right things, like having an emergency fund and, getting that, 3 to 9 months of expenses set aside. So if something does happen, or like I say, an opportunity happens, they could go and quickly get the money out. So there's a lot of different strategies around that I could help out with. And then just when somebody feels comfortable with, the savings and being able to do that, then it starts getting into different types of investment strategies. And so I talk a lot about, tax benefits, for people, and because a lot of people, want to talk about the rates of return and performance and all that stuff, and a lot of times people don't understand. They just, my job is to have the right amount of money for their goals to be met. And
Mhm.
so rates of return are going to go up and down. People are going to lose money, people are going to make money, but if I'm doing my job right, I'm giving them the right amount of money at the end of the process or whenever they need it to be able to get their goals accomplished.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of education I give my clients on how money works, where to put in, then so they have decisions. They make the decisions. It's not me telling them you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. My
Mhm.
job is to give the recommendations and try to be as non-biased as possible. And so that's the benefit of also working with an independent advisor that's not tied to a certain company sometimes. But there's a lot of good advisors that are with good companies that give great advice and stuff. Just have that conversation, and most advisors will sit down and talk with you.
And you speaking of the tax benefits, especially if you're an entrepreneur and that's not your area of expertise, I think it's smart to get a financial advisor that can
Yeah.
help you navigate through that, because there are certain tax benefits if you're an entrepreneur versus a W-2 employee.
Exactly. So I always tell my clients, I'm not a lawyer, like I said before. I don't give legal advice, but I have to know a little bit about what's happening in those situations with the estate planning, those types of things. But then I'm not also a CPA or an accountant to give tax advice. Well, my
Mhm.
job is kind of in the middle, is to bridge the gap with the products and services that could help their estate planning for the future, and that could help their taxes for what's already happened. So that's my job, is to bring that together with their lawyers, with their CPAs, and make sure that everything's working together.
You're part of the team.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
So how long have you been in this industry?
I started in 2007, and so I've been doing it. It's going on 17 years now, or it's over 17 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, I started doing it, helping people, was doing a lot of insurance selling and that kind of stuff, and started getting to the investment side. probably around 3 or 4 years into the business and just started growing on that end. And, been around I have clients all over the country. So, I'm originally from Texas, but not everybody's gonna be able to see the flag behind me, but we moved to Virginia in 2010, me and my wife, and we're both financial advisors. And so she's a CFP with another company, but we work together. And yeah, so I've been doing this, for a little while now, and just starting to try and grow my business and do things as much as I can here.
So I'm curious, you have kids, don't you have 3 kids, right?
3 kids, yes.
3 kids. So I'm assuming a lot of your conversations are kind of around these topics. Have any of the 3 of them kind of grabbed onto this and want to go into the financial field?
Unfortunately not. And it's the craziest thing. I mean, I've seen succession plans with advisors and their kids all the time. I was just in a conference in Maryland, and I had a couple of the advisors there talking about their kids coming up, and I still have hope on one. Maybe my youngest is maybe she'll get into it, and I'll never know if my oldest. I think he's going to be good at sales eventually, but that
Mhm.
doesn't make him, want. None of them want to do what me and my wife do. It's funny because they see what we do, and I
Yeah,
think they have a great life, So,
right.
and I think it would be a great business to get into, but I'm not forcing anything because I want, if somebody's going to be in this job, I want them to want to do it. And I love doing it. I love helping people. And that's the biggest thing. I want them to, if they're going to take over my business, not just to give it to them, but they have to earn their way through it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know my older 2 have definitely caught the entrepreneurial spirit in me. So I love that. I
That's
love that.
awesome. Yeah.
Just like my 22-year-old now, he's starting his own little construction company, and he's doing good.
That's awesome.
Yep, he's doing good. And then even my daughter, she's 16, and I can see the road that she's going down is she wants to own her own business.
Okay.
So I love that I've planted that seed and they've watched me, because you're a role model for your kids. They're watching,
Definitely.
you know. And obviously I want them to see that I'm being smart with our money. And I tell them all the time, we're rich in love, and we have to be smart with our money, and be wealthy. I want my kids to be wealthy. So tell the listeners how they can contact you, how they can get a hold of you.
So I'm pretty sure you'll have my contact information, but you can reach me by phone or email. Do have a website, www.dracoulisfinancialgroup.com, that you can go look at, some of my processes and what I do. Also, if, I'm in the Richmond area, but like I said, I see people all over the country. So I
Mhm.
have a lot of clients in Texas and Florida, Jersey, Philadelphia, all the way up to California and stuff. So, if anybody that hears this is interested in talking, by all means, reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to have a conversation with them.
Okay. And through your website, they can schedule that consultation.
Yes, I mean, I'll have all my contact information on my website to be able to do that. Yeah.
All right, nice. Can you leave us with a final thought?
Yeah. The first step is always the hardest step, and like I said, to do the plan and to start talking to somebody, I think, is the most important thing. Once you do that, then you could decide whether you could do it yourself or if you really do need some help. And a lot of people like help, and they want to make sure that they're doing it correctly. And so having somebody on your side, having somebody that it wants to be a part of your team, and that's the whole thing. That's what I look at myself as, is I want to be part of, my client's team,
Right.
and be able to help them win their financial situation. And
And
so,
financially undress them.
exactly. I mean, everybody's gonna have to undress. I'll help them, be as, I guess, cautious with that kind of stuff and everything.
Yeah.
But there's different ways that and I always tell people I want them to not just trust me. I want to earn their trust and understand that if I do make recommendations or anything, that it's going to be verified first, and they're going to understand that I'm not just throwing out blanket statements or, trying to get them to buy certain products or services. So
Right. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you.
appreciate it.
I
You as
appreciate
well.
your time today. DracoulisFinancialGroup.com.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Monica. You have a great day and take care. Okay.
All right, you too. Thanks.
All right.